module 8, which is on chemical kinetics. So when we're talking about kinetics, usually that's the succeeding question after you ask a thermodynamic question. Kasi yung unang tatanungin sa thermodynamics, does a reaction takes place? And if the answer is yes, that's when kinetics comes in. Pag ang answer mo ay no, wala nang kinetics. Okay? So if the reaction takes place, the next question is how fast does the reaction proceed? Okay? So when you're dealing with chemical kinetics, you're dealing with reaction rate. Simply the change in the concentration of a reactant or product with time. Okay? And they always said that chemical kinetics is one where you can make money. Why? Because there are some reactions that deals with chemical kinetics, right? In our everyday life, in our kinetics, you can make money, okay, by what? Slowing down or making reaction faster. Ano yung main problem of us as a human being? Ano yung kinakatakutan natin sa human being that deals with kinetics? Aging. Okay? So the probability that we will die is what? 100%. It's just when are you going to die? And most likely, okay, one industry that's related to aging is making a lot of money, right? Ano industry to? And ito bang industry na to tinatawag nating gender-related or not?
Ito po ba yung mga cosmetics?
Yep. Cosmetics. Okay? So, without being what we call sexist, hindi na lang natin sasabihin alin yung mas magastos, kung babae o lalaki. But, the idea that we have there is what? We want to be as much as possible, look forever young. Or we could say, in other sides, fresh. Okay? Now, one product that made a lot of things is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Botox. Familiar ba kayo dito sa Botox? I want to go on this one because Botox use this toxin. So yung Botox, that's the combined words of those botulinum toxin. So botulinum toxin in the wrong place is dangerous. A drop of it in the water supply can eradicate human civilization. What does the Botox do in our body? I mean, saan ginagamit ito ng mga artista?
Sa wrinkles po.
Sa wrinkles, yep. So they inject the Botox in the wrinkles because what happened is it paralyzed the movement of the muscle. The same thing that it served as a toxin, yung mechanism niya. Okay? So kapag naano ka niya ng toxin na yan, ipaparalyze niya yung heartbeat. So what happened if your heartbeat is paralyzed, most likely you die. But if you're going to look at kinetics, the one thing that you're going to make money is in food. Whether you make the reaction faster or make it slower. So if you have this what we call animal farm, pwedeng kumita ka ng mas malaki kapag binilis mo yung growth nila. So they use the so-called growth promoters. And one thing that they use is the so-called antibiotics. So what they do, a small amount of antibiotics when they introduce it to farm animals, they make it go faster. So what happened is the antibiotics would alter the stomach flora, okay, and it improved the what we call absorption of food, making it grow faster. So yung 45-day-old poultry, right? You can harvest it within, let's say, 38 days. So you can make a lot of money. Now, in food also, you can also have to find ways of what? Slowing down food degradation. How do you do that? Paano mo na pre-preserve yung pagkain mo? Yan yung rason kung bakit meron kayong appliances na tinatawag na ano.
Sa pagre-ref,
Hmm?
pagpapalamig ng pagkain po.
Pagpapalamig, refrigerator. Okay? Pwede rin mag-cure. You put what? Salt. But what does curing really do? Anyone? Ano yung main reason? Ano yung main mechanism ng curing? Ano yung tinatanggal niya? Pag naglalagay kayo ng asin, ano yung tinatanggal niya? Tinatanggal niya yung tubig or yung moisture. Because they can become what? Host of microorganisms that contribute to the degradation of the food or cause the food to spoil. Okay? So yan lang yung example ng tinatawag nating chemical kinetics. So makakapera ka if you can make a reaction faster to the one that is slower, or you make a reaction slower for the one that is faster. Okay? So you find a problem and then you put a solution that can be commercially viable. But if you're going to look at chemical kinetics, you look at the species that are involved. So let's say we have 1 mole of A, which is a reactant, producing 1 mole of B. So during the course of reaction, what happened to the concentration of A? It will go up or down? Anyone? Will concentration of A go up or down during the course of reaction? Usually, it go down. And since more products is being produced, the amount or the concentration of B goes up. So yung A, yung concentration niya, since nako-consume siya, nababa after some time. Okay, yung B naman nataas. Now, since the reaction rate is the change in the concentration of reactant or product with time, the way you express the rate of reaction or reaction rate is different if you're dealing with a reactant and if you're dealing with a product. Okay? So you can look at the rate in terms of the reactant as the change in the concentration of reactant over time period, delta T, times negative. And I'll explain to you why it's negative. Or bakit meron tayong times negative there. Now, yung rate naman, reaction rate of B, is the change in the concentration of B over the time period, delta T. Now, the main reason why you have a negative sign is A decreases with time, giving you the change in delta H as negative. Ang nangyayari kasi, ito yung kinukuha mo eh. Yung concentration at final time minus the concentration at initial time. And if you are the reactant, what happened? AF is less than AI. So if AF is less than AI, so you will get a negative sign. And you want to express the rate as a positive number. Okay? So if you're going to look at what rate specifically means, so we could say if you're dealing with the reactant, that's the rate of disappearance or the rate of degradation. But if you're looking at the rate in terms of the product, that's the rate of formation. Okay? So as of now, I want you to know bakit yung reactant may negative, yung product wala. Because the product is always what? The concentration at final time is always higher than the concentration of B at initial time. Okay? Now, if we're going to look this to monitor what's happening here during the course of the reaction, so this next slide might be helpful. So initially, it's all A. So what happened? When the reaction occurs, some of the A is used up and you form B. So the A here is denoted by what? Black. And then the product is denoted by B. So as if we look at it by time, the A decreases while the B increases. Kaya yung expression mo ay ganito. Now, you may ask yourself, how did they monitor the decrease, let's say, of A or the increase of B molecules? Well, it depends on the reaction. But the most common one is they look at changes in color. So in this case, sa tingin ninyo, alin ang nag-cause sa brown color dito? Yung reactant o yung product? Try to guess. Sa tingin niyo, ano yung nag-ano dyan? Ano yung responsible doon sa brown color? Ito ba ay reactant or product?
Yung reactants po.
Okay? So it is caused by a reactant. Specifically, your bromine. So what happened when you react bromine with formic acid, you produce bromide, hydronium ion, and CO2. So as you could see, the bromine is the one that caused the red-brown color. But after some time, you lose that. So ibig sabihin, yung concentration nito, nababawasan. How do you know na nababawasan? Kasi nawawala yung kulay. And they monitor that in an instrument called spectrometer, wherein they monitor at a certain wavelength, okay, the color that will absorb the most. And if you're going to look at what happened with time, so maybe this is the T1, and then this is the T2, and then this is the T3, and if I put a T4, maybe siguro ganito na yung itsura niya. It's almost gone. So yan yung way na minomonitor nila yung change in the concentration. Here, they monitor it in terms of the disappearance of the red-brown color. Okay? Now, you can interpret whatever reading that you have there and relate it to the concentrations of the bromine. And if you're going to put a corresponding number there, so you can start with 0, yung initial concentration ng bromine is 0.0120. And after some time, it decreased. So pag na-plot natin yung change in the concentration, ganito yung lalabas. Okay? So we can get the average rate here. This is just what? The difference of the bromine or the change in the bromine concentration over change in time. Or if we're going to expand yung expression na to, we'll just select 2 time spot or time slot and get the corresponding concentration on that. Okay? Now, what we have known so far is just a 1:1. When I say 1:1, like A producing B. And if we're going to look at the rate of that, it can be expressed as what? The negative change in A over change in time, and that is also equals to the change in B over change in time. Now, the question that we will ask, what is the stoichiometric number that we have here? Ano yung stoichiometry na nasa A at nasa B?
1.
Okay, so it's understood that it's 1. Okay, and if we follow the rule, so how are we going to relate the reaction rates with stoichiometry? Or paano natin i-interpret itong reaction na to? We can interpret this as for every 1 mole of A that disappear, there's 1 mole of B that form. Or if we have this thing expression here, for every 2 moles of A that disappear, there is 1 mole of B that is formed. So how are we going to write yung tinatawag nating rate expression? Ito, rate expression yan. Now, how are we going to what we call relate the rate expression, let's say, in the disappearance of the reactant with the formation of the product? There's a general rule there. So, sabi nila, we can express it as this one. And the same thing that we express is as what? 1/1 and 1/1. Pero hindi na natin sinulat because this is equals to what? 1/1 is equals to what?
1.
1. Okay? So, ano ibig sabihin na to? Paano itong general equation na meron tayo dito? So, maybe we can have this general equation here. So, you have A of A reacting with B of B, producing C of C and D of D. So, if we're going to write the rate expression, if you're dealing with reactants, you always multiply it with the negative times the reciprocal of the stoichiometry times delta A over delta T, or whatever the change in concentration over the change in time. Ganun din sa product. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Ang ibig sabihin nito, marirelate natin kung ano yung changes doon sa reactant with change in time or change in the what we call the product. All you need to do is what? Okay? Do this expression. So equivalent to sa lahat na nandito. So you can now relate. So what is the rate of disappearance, let's say, of A with respect to the rate of formation of C? Or what is the rate of disappearance of A with respect to the rate of the disappearance of B? And so on. So let's try. Sige, try natin yung A. I think A is very simple. So anyone wants to try? Paano natin i-write yung expression for each of the reaction in terms of the disappearance of the reactants and the appearance of the products? So sa A, paano natin susulat to? Rate is equals to
Negative change in I po.
negative change in I minus over
Or change in time.
change in T. Okay, and the other one is
Change in, ano po? Ay, negative change in OCL po. Minus
OCL over
time.
time. And the same thing with this one. So masyadong easy to kasi lahat sila 1 eh. So paano naman yung letter B?
Negative 1/4.
Negative 1/4
Yung nasa numerator po ay NH3
NH3
or change in time.
change in time. And then this one is
Negative 1/5. 1/5.
so, pwede ba kayong mag-assure na tama yung sagot nyo dito? Pagdating doon sa next departmental module, quiz. So this is 1/6 change in H2O over time. So maybe to check if you can answer this one, if private message nyo sa akin yung sagot. Saan yung old example? Ang old exam kanina eh. Ito, sagutin nyo. Yung number 1. Ano sagot nyo? I-private message nyo yung letter. Which of the following is not a valid expression? Okay? So, sa mga nag-send, very good. It's letter E. Kasi kapag tinignan nyo to, itong 4NH3, ito to sa 1 over 4, 1 over 4 negative NH3 over delta T. Tapos itong 7O2, that's 1 over 7 negative. Tapos 4NO2, that's 1 over 4 times NO, change in NO2 over delta T, and then 1 over 6 times change in H2O times delta T. So at least, assured kayo na tama yung sagot nyo. Now, let's try to see. So we're dealing with what? Expression. So let's go with, how about when we have numbers? Paano natin sasagutin to? So consider the given reaction. So for every 4 moles of nitrogen dioxide reacting with 2 moles of oxygen, you produce 2 moles of dinitrogen pentoxide. Now suppose that at a particular moment during the reaction, molecular oxygen is reacting at the rate of 0.024. At what rate is N2O5 being formed? And at what rate is NO2 reacting? So ano una natin gagawin? Pag meron tayong tanong na ganito.
Isulat po yung, yung reacting rate na formula.
So, iaano natin yung rate expression. And we can put the rate here as what? 1,4 delta NO2 over delta T equals to delta oxygen over delta T, and 1 over 2 delta N2O5 over delta T. Okay? So, ang tinatanong sa atin dito, kapag meron tayong rate ng oxygen na 0.024, ano yung rate ng N2O5? So, i-relate natin yung dalawang rate na kailangan natin i-relate. So, this is what? Oh, it's oxygen. So, if it's oxygen, so that means you have this. And then you have this one. So, anong rate na ito? What does this rate means? Is it a rate of formation or rate of disappearance?
Rate of disappearance.
So, rate of disappearance. So, pwede natin sabihin ano yung magiging sign niya.
Negative.
Negative. Because we can put here, so if that's a negative, I can put here a negative times negative 0.024. Now, on this side, ano yung kailangan natin? Ito lang, di ba? So, how do I eliminate 1/2?
Multiply by 2.
Kasi ganito yung mangyayari dito, di ba? So, what we do is we multiply this by 2. So, if we multiply this by 2, we also need to multiply this by 2, right? So, this now become what? Now, does this number make sense? Because ano ibig sabihin dito? For every 1 mole that disappear, there's 2 moles that form for N2O4. So kapag meron kang 0.024 moles of this one, magpo-form ka ng times 2 nun, which is 0.048. Clear? Analyze kung medyo malabo bago tayo sagutin yung next na question. Tanong? Bago tayo mag-ano sa next. So on the next one, ano yung i-relate natin? Again, you have your NO2, or no, O2, NO2. You got to erase that one. Over delta T, and you have here what? Negative 1/4. So ang kailangan natin ito. So how do we leave that on one side? Or maybe I can put here the value for that one as negative, and then I also have a negative 0.024. Now I have a 1/4 over here. So how I'm going to eliminate the negative 1/4 here?
I-multiply po sa negative 4.
So you multiply it with 4. Or maybe a negative 4. So ma-eliminate ko. So what do you get here? So that's negative 4 times positive 4. So this will be, wait, have to be, maybe we just put 4 para hindi tayo malito. And if you're going to look at this, what will happen? So this is what? 4 times that 1. So magiging positive siya pero negative pa rin dito. So this is a negative 0.096. Now again, itong negative sign just telling you that's what?
Nade-degrade.
Na nadidegrade siya. But if they just ask you the rate of, let's say, N2O4, kahit 0.096 na lang.
Sir, pag hindi po given yung time, ano po, hindi po siya tinatanggal. Parang yung final answer na po agad yung nakukuha pag
Mm.
binibigyan.
Kasi ang gusto mo lang i-ano itong rate expression sa isang side. Tatanggalin mo lang kung meron man siyang number in before that. And to what we call meron tayong yung self-assessment question. Para at least maano talaga kayo. Here. So, in writing the rate expression of a reaction in terms of the concentration of reactant, why is there a need to put a negative sign before the rate of expression? Ano yung sagot nyo? Sinagot natin yan earlier. Bakit nilalagyan natin ng negative?
Nababawasan po, nade-degrade.
Okay? Because the reactants are what? Consumed. Nababawasan sila. So kapag nababawasan sila, ibig sabihin, okay, mas mababa yung kanilang final concentration. Okay? Now, the next one. So ito yung siguro aanuhin natin. If the rate of decomposition of N2O5 in the reaction 2N2O5 producing 4NO2 plus oxygen at a particular instant is 4.2 times 10 to the negative 7 molar per second, what is the rate of disappearance of A, NO2, and B, O2 at that instant? So anong gagawin natin dito? Maybe we write the reaction. So gagamitin ko yung whiteboard. And then what will I do? I-write ko yun expression. So this will be what? Oh, nag-gets nyo kung ano to? Tama ba yung expression na sinulat ko?
Yes po.
So, ang next sa tanong, ano yung given? Ito yung given. So, ang tinatanong, ano yung corresponding NO2 over delta T at oxygen over delta T. So, paano natin sasagutin? Oops. So, we can relate the two expression. So, maybe this one is what? 1/2 delta N2O5 over delta T equals to 1/4 NO2 divided by T. And again, ano talaga yung value nito?
Negative. Negative 4.2 times 10 raised to negative 7.
So how do we eliminate the 4 here?
Multiply for both sides.
Okay? So if we multiply this by 4, ganun din dito. So ano, matatanggal to. So ito, ganito na lang. And this one will become what? 4 divided by 2. So that's a negative 2
Negative 2.
times 4.2 times 10 to the 7. So this becomes
Positive 8.4 times 10 raised to negative 7.
tama ba? Analyze. Kung may tanong, huwag mahiyang magtanong. O, konti lang naman tayo.
Sir, paano po malalaman kung yung ano po, yung value po ng rate ay sa substitute lang? Kasi yung kanina po, hindi po na substitute dito. Ang
Kasi
nangyari po kasi dito, may pa sa 1 half.
Kasi dito, ang given, yung 4.2, ito lang. Yung kanina kasi, yung given, ganito yung expression niya. Wala siyang ano, ano man tawag dito? Yung i-multiply mo by 1 lang. So dito, yung given, ito lang. Kita mo to? Inano ko dito. So ibig sabihin, kung meron man siya number before nun, kailangan gamitin mo yun. Or if you want, we can solve the other one, which is what? Negative 1/2 delta N2O5 over delta T. And this is just what? As is. Right?
Yes po.
So, alam mo, yung given na ito lang yun. So all you need to do is you multiply it with the negative 1/2. Diba? Negative 4.2 times 10 to the negative 7. Since wala naman tong 1 over something, it's just 1. So, ang sagot nito ay 1/2 ng 4.2. Ito yung sagot. Or pwede kong kunin dito. Let's say, I want to relate NO2 with O2. So paano yun? Ganito, di ba? So anong value ito? Saan ito nagko-correspond itong 8.4?
Doon lang po sa NO2.
Doon lang sa NO2 tsaka delta T. So 1.1 over 4 times 8.4 times 10 to the negative 7. And that is also equals to what?
2.1 times 10
Yun, di
raised to
ba?
negative 7.
So ano, kaya?
Sir, question po. Kung maka-encounter po kami ng unbalanced equation, ibabalance.
Iba-balance nyo. But you seldom see it in kinetic problem. Pag talagang ginawa yun, napaka-brutal yun. And I will not allow that to happen. Hindi ako papayag na ganun na lang yung question. But some instructor are doing that. Nag-comment nga ako nung bago ako. Okay.
Kakayanin.
So the next thing that I'm going to discuss to you is yung factors na nag-a-affect doon sa reaction rate. Okay? So I'm just going to clear this whiteboard that we have here. So there are 4 factors that affect reaction rate. One of them, they said, is the nature of reactants. So, you can interpret it in several ways. Pwedeng sabihin ninyo, in terms of the natures of the reactants, pwedeng particle size. So, alin sa inyo sa tingin nyo ang maapektuhan nyo, mas mataas yung reaction rate? Yung particle size na maliliit pero marami, o yung napakalaking sample pero konti lang? Which one do you think will have a faster reaction rate? The one that has a small size or the one that has a big size? Anyone?
Smaller size.
Smaller size.
Yeah.
Okay. They might be smaller, but if you're going to look at their surface area, it's much bigger. Right? Compare sa surface area dito, ang surface area lang dito ay yung surface niya. So, ang nagre-react lang ay yung surface. Pero kapag smaller yung size mo, malaki yung surface area, so malaki yung site of reaction. Usually, the reaction usually happen when they said through the so-called collision theory. So, sa tingin niyo, alin mas maapektuhan dito sa collision theory? Yung small size o yung big size? So, usually, the smaller the size, the faster is the reaction and the higher is the reaction rate. Okay? Now, another thing that we can take into consideration, so, in terms of nature of reactants, merong reactants, pag minix mo sa isang reactants, hindi siya mag-mix. Polar materials with the polar materials, they're not going to make any reaction. They will make a reaction. But if you have a polar and non-polar, they're not going to mix. Too bigat lang is, hindi yan mag-mix. That's another way to look at this so-called nature of reactants. If the nature is not the same, they are of opposite polarity, there would be no reaction. Okay? Now, another thing that we can look is concentration of the reactant. So how does this explained by the collision theory? So on collision theory kasi, they said that for a reaction to take place, the reactant must collide with one another. So if the concentration of the reactant is higher, what do you think will happen? There will be higher probability of collision. Try to imagine some vehicles in a parking lot. Ano yung chance na yung mga sasakyan ay mag-hit or mag-collide with one another? If maraming sasakyan or konti lang yung sasakyan?
Pag marami.
Pag maraming sasakyan. So ganun din sa collision theory. If you have higher concentration of your reactant, most likely, you're going to have a higher probability of collision. And if you have higher probability of collision, your reaction rate also increases. Okay? Next one, temperature. So what happened to your reactant when the temperature increases?
Mas nagiging excited po.
Mas magiging excited. Yung correct term. In terms of movement. Pag excited ka, anong galaw mo? Mabilis, di ba? So in terms uli ng car sa parking lot, so pag mas mataas ang temperature mo, anong ibig sabihin yun? Mabilis yung takbo ng kotse, right? Ano yung number one cause ng accident kapag may banggaan?
Overspeeding.
Overspeeding. Pag mabilis yung movement ng mga reactant, mas higher yung probability na mag-collide sila, so mas mataas yung reaction rate. Okay? Now, last but not the least is the presence of this so-called catalyst. So what is a catalyst? Anyone? First time nyo ba marinig tong term na catalyst? How do we define a catalyst?
Sir, it lowers the activation energy.
Right, lower activation. But we go first with the catalyst. Ano yung definition natin sa catalyst?
Sir, may presence po ng parang pagbasa.
So these are a material that hasten reaction. So itong material na to, ang ginagawa niya, pinapabilis niya yung reaction. Okay? Now, they said for a reaction to happen, it should overcome yung tinatawag nating EA. Ano yung EA? Somebody mentioned that earlier. Okay? Yung activation energy. For the reaction to be completed, the reactant must overcome this hill known as activation energy. Now, what the catalyst does is it provides another mechanism that is usually what? Has a lower activation energy. Now, what's the what we call requirements of a catalyst? It will make the reaction faster, and before and after the reaction, it's the same. Right? So kung ano yung catalyst mo at the beginning, at the end siya pa rin. And do you know what biological catalysts are? Anyone?
Enzymes, sir.
Very good. Enzyme. So yan yung factor na nag-a-affect siya reaction rate. Nature of reactants, the higher the surface area, the faster the reaction, the higher is the reaction rate. Concentration of the reactants, the higher the concentration, okay, the higher the probability of collision, okay, and the higher the reaction rate because the faster the reaction. Temperature, the faster the increase in temperature results in faster movements of the reactants or the molecules, allowing them to collide with one another, resulting in a faster reaction and higher reaction rate. Yung catalyst makes the reaction faster without itself being affected. And the way that it works is it provides an alternative reaction mechanism, usually has a lower activation energy. Because if we're going to look at your module, so the objectives that we have here, at least we're defined the reaction rate, the rate of reaction, change in concentration with respect to change in time, explain the factors affecting the rate of reaction, yung sinabi ko lang a while ago, and then describe the collision theory and use it to explain the factors affecting the rate of the reaction, and then define the activation energy and use it to explain the factors affecting the rate of the reaction. So ito yung coverage natin for module 8. And next time, we're going to go on this rate law na meron dito. And then go over also on this collision theory that we have. Okay. And then catalysis problem. So may tanong kayo? Now, what I heard from the exam, no one among the students in section U3 and B1 got a single digit score, which I think is very good. And the average is 25 for the students that I have in section U3 and B1. They're still doing some correction in the exam. So I'm hoping maybe on Thursday or maybe Tuesday, our last meeting, our formal meeting, we will know your score. So tanong, mahirap ba yung exam, yung departmental quiz nyo?